Hello, and welcome back to Luke and Jason Play Magic the Gathering.
What's up, nerds?
So, if you guys are just joining this series, and you see this, and you're like, oh, Magic the Gathering, I've heard of that game, and you're just hopping in.
This is episode 3.
You need to go back.
Yeah, you gotta go back.
This is one of those series that you can't just watch it. You can't just join halfway through because there's so much to learn about this game.
Unless you already know how to play.
If you know how to play, welcome. We're going to be teaching and going into the details of this game. But if you have no idea what Magic the Gathering is and you would like to play, go and watch episode 1 and then watch episode 2 and then join us back here for episode 3 where we get into turn 3 of Talrand is about to start his turn. So here we go. So what's happened up to this point?
So yeah, this game, we haven't done much on our side. We've put down our 2 resources on the first 2 turns.
Here's a big deal. What just happened right here?
Ooh, okay, so now it is his 3rd turn, our opponent's 3rd turn, and it's already to the end phase. And he did not lay down a 3rd resource.
That's a big deal.
Which means he can't play anything that costs 3 or less. Or,
So,
I mean, he can play something that costs less, but nothing 3, which that's a pretty bad sign if you...
It's unfortunate.
If you don't get land, like, generally your goal is to have 1 land laid down every turn.
The reason why it's so unfortunate is because as the game progresses, the more and more land you put down, the bigger and bigger spells you can cast, the bigger creatures will come into play, and the bigger combos you can pull off. So if you're stuck only at 2 resources and that's all you have, which by the way, again, these are resources, the land are resources, you can tap them to give mana, to spend to bring bigger creatures out. Like, for instance, this guy at the top right, you can see he costs 3 any color and then 3 fire. So 3 plus 3 is 6. We can only play this card if we have 6 resources. So in order to do that, that has to be pretty much on turn 6. Or later. That is if you have been putting down a resource every single turn. On his turn, he didn't put down a resource, so he kind of set himself back a little bit. It's not like it's his fault. It's not like he couldn't do it. He just didn't draw.
Yeah, it's just a little bit of luck involved in
There is some luck in this game, and
he just got unlucky.
He got unlucky, so he couldn't do it. So now it's going to be our start of our turn. We're going to draw a card, and then we do have a resource in our hand. So now we have 3 resources. So now we're opened up to a whole new world of possibilities of what we can play. So we could play this guy. That's one option. We could play this thing. We could still play this. It only costs 2 instant speed if we wanted to, but I think we're gonna hold on to this because we have some better options.
That's a good thing that could come into play later.
Okay, and then we have this card. So we have 3 different cards that we're gonna play. So that's why this game is fun, because it gives you options, and basically we're at a fork in the road at the game right now. We can choose which path we're going to go down. So let's read these cards that we have available to us to play. So what's this first one?
So we have a creature here, which generally creatures are going to be what you want to get out, because they most of the time have a little bit better what's the word I'm thinking of? Like, have a better payout for what you're spending.
Like I said in an earlier episode, when you put a creature out, it stays there forever until your opponent deals with it. So when the creature comes out, it's going to have 2 attack and 2 health, this one in particular, and it won't go away. It's going to
so like the potential would be that this creature could deal 2 damage to your opponent every turn after you have played it. So
this particular creature, though, let's talk about this one for a little bit. So it has flying and haste. So
yeah,
flying.
So those are keywords that, if you want to get into the game, those are things you should try to memorize what they do.
Yeah. Well, let's just tell them about flying. Flying is one of the most common keywords in the game. So it's just something about this particular creature and other creatures in the game. There are creatures that can fly, and then there's creatures that can't fly. So the creatures that can fly will fly over the top of all of the guys basically on the ground.
Yeah, we haven't really got much into combat yet because it hasn't happened in the game, but
It's true.
yeah, so basically, to kind of start off more with combat, once your creatures are out, go to haste.
Yeah.
Unless they have this haste keyword, which our guy does.
And haste is also a common keyword, so I know you might be thinking like, oh, we haven't even seen any like bloodshed yet, and this is like what, the third episode. It's because we're talking about these keywords is because it's a very common keyword that you see on tons of cards. Like when you open up a pack of Magic the Gathering cards and you read through, you're gonna see some creatures that have flying or haste, and you're gonna be like, what the fuck do those mean? So haste.
Yeah, so hey, unless a card has haste, when you play a creature card, it cannot attack the turn that you played it. It has what they call summoning sickness.
Right.
And so you can't attack with it until your next turn.
Mm-hmm.
But haste allows those creatures to ignore the summoning sickness so that they can either attack, or if they have an ability that
they can use their ability.
Like if they have ability that requires them to exhaust, then they can also do that.
Yep.
So
the reason why this guy is good is because not only does he have haste, so when we play him, he's going to be able to attack right away. But as you can see, he's a cost of 3, and his stats are only 2/2. Usually, I try to think about it this way: if a creature costs 1, it's probably going to at least have 1 attack and 1 hit point. If it costs 2, it's probably going to have 2 attack and 2 hit points. If it has 3, then it's going to be 3 attack, 3 hit points, so on and so forth. So if it's a turn 8, it should have 8 attack and 8 hit points. So it'll be a turn 8, 8, 8.
But sometimes they sacrifice a little bit of health or attack for another ability.
When he says they, he's talking about the
like
people
the
that
people
design
who
the
made game.
cards. Yeah.
They to make so that the cards aren't just completely overpowered. They will.
Yeah.
You know, when they're designing a card, say, okay, we need to give this a little bit less health or attack, but so then we can give it flying and
to give it a really cool ability.
Yeah.
So that's this card. It also has some other text on there that says, whenever an opponent is dealt damage by a red instant or sorcery spell you control by a red planeswalker or you control, return this card from your graveyard to your hand. This is why we're talking to you the way that we're talking to you, because that's a ton of stuff. There are probably some people that are just going like, what? Like, what does that all mean? It makes perfect sense to Jason and I.
And it's actually a really great ability.
It's a really good ability, but it makes sense to Jason and I, but to you guys new to the game, you're like, what the heck?
No idea what that just
You won't know what it does until you actually see it in action, and then it's all going to make sense. So this game is also a lot about logic and logic building and being able to understand. So some of you might appreciate it. Some of you guys are maybe just watching this right now because you like hanging out with Jason and I, and that's cool. And maybe you'll pick up something on this, especially once we start getting into the game and playing. So here's another card that we can play.
Yeah, this is another enchantment. Actually, this is the same enchantment that we had earlier. Which, honestly, I think this is kind of a terrible card. So I would choose not to play this card.
So let's just read it. So at the beginning of each player's upkeep, so basically every time you start your turn, this card, the Sulfuric Vortex, deals 2 damage to that player. So you might be thinking like, whoa, at the beginning of every time that our opponent starts his turn, it does 2 damage to them. Yeah, that's true. But it happens to each player. That means it happens to us too. So, not that great.
Yeah, so it's like, it helps you get towards...
But it hurts.
The goal of killing your enemy, but it also hurts you.
Yes.
So I don't think it's a good card. And later on, we'll talk about the fact that you can customize your decks.
Yeah.
And even in this game on Xbox, you can like customize your decks and build your own stuff.
Yeah.
In that case, I would choose not even to put this in the deck.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's a fairly terrible card, and
there are uses for it.
Yeah. I mean, there are definitely some situational uses, but Because, okay, but anyway, back to our turn 3. We have 3 open resources. This is one of the cards that we could play, but I would choose not to play.
The second part on there, it just says if a player would gain health, that player gains no health instead. So if we were playing against a deck that was healing itself over and over and over again, this card has its uses for that.
There's all kinds of decks, and we'll get more into different decks and different strategies and stuff.
Here's the third card we could play. Do you want to explain this one?
All right, so this is another 3 cost.
This is another card type that we haven't seen yet, though.
Well, we did talk about this a little bit in an earlier previous episode.
But we haven't seen a sorcery card.
Yeah, this is a sorcery card. Basically, earlier we saw an instant card, which can be played at any time. This is very similar, but it can only be played during main phases. During our main phases, on our turn, where instant can be played on an opponent's turn if you want. So, Flames of the Firebrand deals 3 damage divided as you choose among 1, 2, or 3 creatures and or players.
Yeah.
So that is a really, really good card.
Yeah.
So basically what that means is this card is going to be dealing 3 damage. And let's say your opponent has 0 creatures out. Then you can just choose to deal 3 damage directly to the opponent. If they have 1 creature out, you could choose to deal
1 of the damage.
1 or 2 or 3 damage to the creature, depending on how much health it has.
Yeah.
Or, say if it only has 1 hit point, then you could deal 1 to that creature, kill the creature, and then you can deal the remaining 2 damage to the player.
It has a lot of options.
Yeah, it's great utility.
It's a versatile card that has good utility. And think about it this way: you have 3 different packets of damage of 1 that you can split up. It might not seem like it's all that great of a spell, but Jason and I know the power behind a card like that. It's very good. I think that this is the card we should play.
Yeah, this is definitely the card we should play because it's a creature. It's something that's going to last. It's going to stay out and play. And not only that, but it also has the good abilities flying and haste, so we can actually use it right away to attack.
This is going to be the very first creature that we play on Luke's Arcade for Magic the Gathering. This is a 3 cost. So we have 3 mana or 3 land or resources. There's a bunch of different names for it. We will use any one of those words. So we're going to go ahead and play it. So we're paying the 3. Notice that the 3 land moved.
We tapped.
Yep.
So they're exhausted now, and we can't use them again this turn.
But as you can see, look at the card is floating. That means that it has flying. That's just a little thing that they do in this game.
So this will be our first attack, our first combat phase.
So here's something about flying. This little Kraken hatchling, it is on the ground. It does not have flying. So here's one of the beauties of flying in this game, is that thing is a defender. If it had flying, it would be able to block our flying thing because it's up in the air.
Or if ours did not have flying, it would also be able to block.
If somehow this Phoenix didn't have, be able to fly, then this little hatchling would be able to block our thing. But as you will see in this attack, let's just make it happen. So I just declared an attack on his, on him, like on our opponent. So here's something also that's kind of important in this game, is that when you declare an attack, you can only declare an attack on your opponent. You can't attack into the other little creatures if there's a bunch of other little creatures out on the field. When I declare an attack, it's just straight up like, all right, I am attacking you with this guy and this guy and this guy. Now you basically hand over control to them that says, do you want to block with any of you guys, which you'll see here. So that's all the attackers that I'm declaring. As you'll see, there will be something up above Jason that will say, or there is a block phase, but you didn't really get to see it.
Yeah.
So
because he couldn't block, it just skipped over it.
Yeah.
So anyway, then he swoops in with his flying and just does 2 damage to the opponent.
Yep. So you see this tip right here. If you're not watching this on 720p full screen, you won't probably be able to read this, but it says tip: winning the game, you've dealt damage to your opponent. Deal 18 more damage to win the game.
So yeah, our opponent and ourselves both have 20 hit points.
We start the game with that.
We dealt 2 damage with our attack just then, and so now obviously there are 18 more hit points for us to kill on our opponent before we win the game.
Which seems like a lot because we're doing this a little bit slower, but we're eventually going to beat this guy down and we'll win the game for you. So that is going to be it for this episode. Make sure to come back for the next one and learn a little bit more about Magic the Gathering with Luke and Jason.
Yeah.
Goodbye.